jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
Now I want you two to get good rest.
What if I have a bad dream?
Well, I'm sure we can handle any dream you have.
What if I dream that you sent us away into the dark and we get hurt? Really hurt? And what if I'm so sad and scared of the dark out there that I put poison in me for years and years until my blood turns into poison and my heart breaks right in half and I can't feel anything happy. Until I can't stand it anymore and I have to die. Until I'm on a silver table with my jaw wired shut. Would you wake us up from a dream like that?
We're not like any other family. We're different because of where we grew up. Hill House.
Your mother, she was not crazy. Neither was your sister, neither is your brother, neither are you. It's that house.
You don't have to worry now, sweetie. That really bad dream? Of course I'd wake you.
We lay my love and
I have a story.
beneath the weeping willow.
A ghost story.
Singing oh, willow, waily by the tree that weeps with me. We lay my love and I beneath the weeping
Greetings, Earthlings. I got Iris-Sora Saravia of Cinema Beef and BBNC podcast. Hello. So, I thought we'd tackle the first two Mike Flanagan podcasts, and of course, just as we were doing this, he already came out like a month
Right?
with his new podcast. So yeah, no, I'm gonna be playing catch up every time, everywhere, because I'm the same way whenever something hits, again, just Apple or Disney Plus. My sister wants to watch it that week, and I'm like, can we at least, skip a week so we at least have 2 to watch? If there's anything even if the show sucks, everything is pretty much figured out to be, leave you wanting a little bit of more, and even if you don't like it, you still kind of want to get through it and see what all the fuss is about. So, because doesn't everything have to be a big deal nowadays? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Twitter saying, what the fuck was that? I want my money back, even though I didn't spend any money on it. Shut up. So, how did you kind of get into kind of the haunted house kind of following, or even Mike Flanagan's work for that matter?
Well, with Mike Flanagan, I mean, Gerald's Game. Why not, right?
Okay, sweet.
Yeah, and then we have The Haunting of Hill House, and then Dr. Sleep, and the latest and greatest,
Midnight Mass.
we have Midnight Mass, right? So I am just like, whoa! I mean, this guy hits it out of the park for me every time. But getting into the haunted house type of thing, I think I'd have to be in maybe first grade. The very first movie I've ever watched in. Yeah.
Very creepy.
Yeah, the very first movie I ever watched, like horror movie that I watched on the big screen was Murders at the Manchester Morgue, which at the time here, it was called Don't Open the Window. And I was intrigued. I really liked it.
That is not a meaning for that someone ripped one. You got to open a window.
Right?
But yeah, no, that's a pretty key movie.
Yeah. I mean, that was intense. I mean, and for me, a 6-year-old, I just ate it up, and
Wasn't
I
that
loved
a
it.
70s TV movie? Or?
No, actually, it was a movie back in the 70s, and it was basically this machine was bringing dead people to life.
Oh, okay. Let sleeping corpses lie, right?
Yes, that one.
Okay,
That's
that's
okay. It has 3 names.
Well, like all these jails. Okay.
Right, yeah. So, and then, it kind of got me into the horror genre, and I wanted to see more and more and more. Started reading books. I was reading some of Ray Bradbury, not the science fiction stuff, but more of the thriller kind of books,
Nice.
and I just got totally into it.
Monsters on Mayberry Street. I read that short story.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that, and it just took off for me there. And, I would stay up and watch, when Elvira came on, and I started devouring those movies, and
Devour. Nice.
it was just like, I just loved the genre, and I just couldn't get enough. I mean, going to watch The Children and stuff like that. Blood Beach. I mean, it was such fun, to me.
Yeah.
And my friends thought that I was just like a fucking weirdo because I thought these movies were fun, which they were, So, and people still think I'm weird.
Oh man, it seems like it's never ending, and now everyone's like, "Oh, it's cool to be weird." I'm like, "Well, it didn't used to be. I mean, it used to be kind of
Right?
taboo
I
to
know,
be a
right?
geek or a nerd."
It's kind of like when you were a nerd in school, it was not cool. But now, if you're not a nerd, then you're not cool. So.
I saw that when the new Star Trek was coming out, and everyone's like, "Oh, Star Trek's cool again." I'm like, "Yeah, no, fuck you guys. I know when it didn't used to be cool."
Right.
And so yeah, I saw that also kind of when, I don't know, like various other serial killer movies were coming out, and even just monster movies. Like I saw people saying, "Yeah, I always saw the Universal horror stuff." I'm like, "Yeah, I doubt it. I think you guys are the audience that only saw, say, maybe, I don't know,
You've seen it on Blu-ray. I saw it like on TV.
You're right."
Yeah,
I
but
had
you
very
know,
classic. So I mean,
yeah, watching like prom night on big screen when I was a kid.
that
No,
has to be
it's
awesome.
stuff like that. Is Friday the 13th, things like that. On Friday the 13th, I got to see with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and that was at the drive-in, and it was just so awesome. Now
Yeah,
to be able to do things like that.
I mean, I don't know. There's some people who still didn't even have access to like a library for whatever reason, or even just a film studies class, and it really, you do owe yourself to that experience, because it really is kind of complimentary at helping you just kind of just see, aside from just what other people are talking about, but also just kind of just different kinds of cinema. And
Mhm.
I don't know. I think everyone's just so, somewhere along the way, everyone just felt English now. It's like we have people who are just batshit crazy and just can't even form a paragraph, let alone anything without being a rant. So fortunately, I think there's a lot of critics that have survived that do lots of blogs and have gained a kind of a cult following, and so they've inspired other people. And I don't know. Well, I think you're kind of seeing it even with YouTube. Even everyone's got to kind of borrow the inner guy's shtick, and that kind of got
Yeah.
old after a while. And it's like, whatever happened to just be you, and you just have just endless content. You have something ready every week, you know?
Yeah, and that's probably why Mike, Mark, and I have had like what 9 years of podcasting on BBNBC, because we have our niche, right? It's the exploitation flicks, whether it be horror, sexploitation, nunsploitation, even, we've even talked about dwarves, okay, and midgets and little people. Let's call them little people, because I don't want to upset anyone out there. Right? I mean, we've
Yes.
talked about movies like that, so that is our niche, and that's what we do. And I think, like the so-called influencers, they want to be the everything of everything, and it's just kind of hard to do that, And I was just like, don't try so hard,
Yeah.
just find something you're good at and do it.
When I did this podcast, I knew instantly what it was going to entail, because I'd already been on another podcast, and they're not listening, so this doesn't matter. But it fucking sucked, because they weren't organized. Like I would do literally all the research. I had to drive to their house. This was before COVID. And
Oh yeah.
the main host was too worried about the video feed and the playback. It's like, let's worry about, we're not going live. So, the video can be an option later. We got to get our shtick down. We got to, because we're going on for hours. I don't think, do you really want to do all the editing on this? And then, the female host, she totally screwed the pooch. She would flat out, like, we were discussing, I think, Cyberpunk on one episode, and she was like, I don't really know what we're talking about. Just look at the first sentence. I'm like, I gave you the Wikipedia page. All you had to do was dedicate 10 minutes to that. And already you're still asking me, does this count as a movie? I'm like, I sent you the list. I asked you 3 times, did you watch the list? And once again, the host was just too worried with, oh dear, the camera just battery went out. I'm like, you can't do this all. You got to pick one or the other, and then slowly enlarge yourself. Like, I had this too. Like, I had a pal helping me out with the sound, and I could never tell what episode he was listening to because he was being vague. I'm like, are you talking about last week's or this week's? Because there is a difference in the sound quality on this week's. So you got to take the punches, and you also got to just say, hey, you can't expect an instant audience. And I think that's the other thing too. It's kind of like any egos who you encounter just getting into any kind of job is like they instantly expect instant fame and gain. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's does not happen ever to even any of your heroes or so-called,
Yeah, you got to do your time. You got to do your time, man. It's like, and you got to do something you love, because if you don't really love to do it, doesn't matter if you have, 1 million followers. When it becomes a chore, it's no fun anymore, and you might as well just give it up.
Oh, totally. If I run out of guests, I'll just start doing just solo shit. I don't care. I set my hours. Anyone who doesn't show up, then I'm just gonna say, fuck it. I gave you 10 minutes. There's no episode tonight.
Yeah, no, I mean, you are totally right. I mean, you can You know,
Your
if
hours.
yeah, right. So, you know, if you feel you have something to say, then you know you're going to record and you say it. Whether
I'm so glad you said that. There's so
one,
many. I was on another horror podcast, and for a while they were roasting all kinds of movies, and I kept giving them a warning. I'm not going to be on this episode. We're not going to be constructive. Sure, now there's like 2 different ones where I'm like, God damn it, we're not even talking about the movie, and you guys are just making fun of me because I know this is a bad movie, but I find there's some entertainment value in this shit fest, and you can't tell me a single reason why it sucks. And I'm like, come on, you know, how old are you? I know you can. I know if this is a movie you loved, you would go endlessly into detail on trivia you read. And, oh my god, some people just can't do one or the other. They just like, okay, even if I don't like it, I'm still gonna just try and detail why it appeals to many people or why a certain audience might like it. You know, don't try and cut people out of the loop. And I think that's the other problem too. Everyone's just like, oh no, this is bad. If you hate it, if you love it, no.
no. See, it's kind of like one of the, you know, Mark Searing co-host, one of my co-hosts with BBNBC. You know, he says every film deserves to be watched, whether it entertains you or not. It does deserve a watch because somebody put in their
everything
heart and
deserves a
soul into it, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, whether you like it or not, fine. But, you
Although
know,
it did get annoying seeing how so often many reviewers, even ones I love and admire, would almost just fall victim to just saying so-and-so's screenplay is rather inept. I'm like, well, you don't necessarily know that the person credited actually wrote it. You know, it could have been the producer.
exactly. And
recut
there's
it
always
or
so much
rewrote it.
studio interference and everything.
Yeah, or maybe the director and writer didn't get along, and the director did his typical, you know, uncredited rewrites. You know, it happens.
Well,
They
yeah,
don't
I mean,
have to
it's
be a
happened
member
so
of the
many
Writers Guild to
movies.
do that. And yeah, and there's, well, that's a good point too. There's plenty of times where you've seen actors, especially the ego-headed ones, go into the editing room and recut the movie.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, it's
I take
somebody's
it you've been on
vision,
independent
right?
films. Yeah.
It's somebody's vision, and the vision deserves respect. Whether
Every vision.
it's, you know, the shittiest movie that you've ever seen, but there was some entertainment value for you, then there was some entertainment value.
If you can even talk about it, that already merits it.
Right? Exactly. I mean, you
I
know,
take it have you worked on any independent films by any chance? Or had some pals? It seems like everyone's got a friend nowadays. It's
yeah,
just like,
right. Everybody's got a
everyone can do
friend that has a friend. Actually, no.
Really? Okay.
And I have more friends that are more in the working on plays and books than movies and such. But
Hey, that's a good start too. They might be at the Tonys 50 years from now.
hey, you never know. I mean, one guy that I used to work with, I believe his aunt was a regular at the British plays and Masterpiece Theater and stuff. So,
Sweet.
you know, so.
Cool.
And he had a couple of plays that actually did get produced. So I was like, dude, well, right on for you, man.
He gets bragging rights. Yep. So with Flanagan, I've been a fan since 2013. I had time
Wow.
in between college. I was waiting for my sister's class to finish up. You know, we shared a car ride, and I saw this in a theater with 2 other people. I had no relation to. That's how packed it was. It was a limited release, and it blew me the hell away. I was like, horror's coming back. I think we're getting less of the torture and snuff themed movies. We're getting more just kind of original kind of hauntings and zombie thrillers and
Yeah.
just organized inspiration, for lack of a better way to sum it up. So this follows Haunting of Hill House is a readaptation of Shirley Jackson's same source material that inspired both the 1963 and 99 version of The Haunting. I saw that there was an Amblin Entertainment logo. That made sense since the 99 one was by DreamWorks and Amblin. And so it follows the Crane couple and their 5 children who are traumatized in the summer of 1992 while renovating their mansion on Hill House. And then focuses on their predicaments 26 years later. This was an easy binge for me. I really could get into it just right away because, again, like, I guess you could say Flanagan is just very oriented about character development comes first. You can just tell he just plans out all these shots. He used to even supervise the editing and scoring of certain movies. I think he still does in some cases. And I just knew this was going to be a character piece with horror and mystery elements to it. So I take it since you rewatched it for this awesome special we're doing together, I take it you picked up on some of the Easter eggs. I need to go back and do that.
Oh, yes, I did.
I know some people who I know who have seen it multiple times, like they have nothing better to do. They can binge a show every day. I wish I had that opportunity.
Oh, man, I wish I had that kind of time, too.
And they were seeing just some haunting doll and ghost imagery on even the mirrors. I'm like, Jesus, I might need just a Blu-ray just to freeze frame it. Just zoom in on this.
This itself is a beautiful retelling. I mean, the one thing that Mike Flanagan does, and I know I really appreciate it, is the respect he has for the original product. He doesn't want to me, it seems like he does not want to kind of like make it grandiose, but he does want to tell you a story, and he sits you down and he says, once upon a time, there was this little boy, right? He doesn't go like, boom, bang, and then there was this and that. And he's like, no, it's this quiet kind of like you're sitting down at a campfire and somebody starts telling you a spooky story. And it's great because you can get all these little details, like one of the Easter eggs in this, Theo is sitting reading Shirley Jackson's The Lottery.
That's a good point. There's in both of these, we'll get to the other one later, but yeah, and you brought up playwrights earlier. Charlene Castro-Smith, one of the co-writers, is a playwright, believe it or not. So I did kind of get that same kind of similar staging, just one location for the most part, title location at least. And
right.
I think the reason it just broke so many barriers is just genre fans ate it up, non-genre fans ate it up. You have Stephen King and even Tarantino just talking about it casually in interviews, and it just, the moody imagery is just so well timed. It pays off, and
the freaking the cinematography in this also is just beautiful, because the one scene where the kids flip from being, the little ones to adults and then back to little, as the camera is just panning in a circle, it just again brings back this beautiful imagery of, and Nell says it at the end, she says, she thought that time was like dominoes, that, you hit one and there was a progression of from beginning to end, but instead it's like snowflakes falling. And you get
don't
that.
call me that. I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, they did a lot of just cool morphing. That they've done those kinds of effects. It seems like since like 2005, but like this was way even more expensive. Like, whoa, I'm just looking at the younger self of them now in the mirror.
And it was just not just the morphing, but it was just kind of like how the story needed to be told. I know some folks didn't like it because it seemed like the story was jumping around all the place. Well, that was the fucking point. Right?
This
story cannot be fluid.
I had that complaint with like Cloud Atlas, and it's like, well, good luck. Ever heard of reincarnation? That's essentially what this movie is. And yeah, some people just hate jumping around. It's just like they cannot follow it no matter what they know they're in for, and you just have to say, oh, all right, let bygones be bygones. You guys suck. Because
yeah, and
it's so easy to figure out. It really is. And that's kind of what makes it even more scary, because you're kind of want to see, because some of them you already get hinted at, especially with Luke And Shirley, you know instantly there's kind of the most troubled, and you want to know instantly, oh shit. So I wonder what possibly traumatized them as adults, but which led to their current predicament, especially with Luke's just incessant just dishonesty, drug addiction, and just flaking out at just every family event. It's just like, fuck you, Luke. But I feel for you, Luke. But man, you suck, Luke. So it's like we've all kind of had different kinds of families and heard different stories, or had pals who pretty much, came to live with other pals because they couldn't stand their bloodline, And I think this is why it instantly resonates. You're just like, it's not something vague like just random, honey, I'll save you. No random bullshit like that. It's all, what's wrong? Seriously, what's wrong? Everyone's got natural conversations going on, and you can't. Yeah. It really is a good parallel to actual traumatization. It's like you wonder who will actually kind of spill the beans on their predicament earlier, and which one will just kind of like you might not even know any more detail than what the movie already has told you.
Right. Yeah. And it also deals with such a touchy subject that people don't like to discuss this whole thing. Right. It's kind of like family secrets.
Yeah. Don't ask about Hill House. Do not.
Right. Don't ask about this. And it deals with, the center of this thing is the house, but within the house, that center is the suicide of Nell, and how it affected everyone, and how everybody's way of living and how they were in Hell House themselves, or in Hill House, how it created their world, and how their world was, it's kind of like Poppy tells Olivia, out there, that world is full of teeth and rot and disease, and it's going to take your children from you.
That was a really good line of dialogue. I'm glad you brought that portion up, because, man, I felt kind of like I was being eaten away when they mentioned that. It is like, yeah, it is like, you can have any kind of education or upbringing. It won't, life's harsh reality will not, be on pause. You gotta embrace it, or brace for impact, for that matter.
Yeah, exactly. And she was
at the worst upbringing, so there's no telling what worser thing could actually happen to him at this point.
Right. And and Olivia, of course, like any other mother, would want to protect their children from all that. And you start to see Olivia's breakdown and how the house is affecting her. But it's really not the house, though, is it? It's all of that grief and the ghosts that are in there, and how they met their end, and influencing also starting to come on to Olivia. And both Olivia and the dad, Hugh, I believe his name was.
Yes.
Hugh.
And that's very true, because it's like they weren't happy to even get there. They find these dead animals and they have to bury, so that's already traumatizing to them, because now they're getting nightmares, and you already know that this house kind of just festers in all the grief, all the distrust, all the other visions and nightmares, and just channels them all throughout the house. So
right, because it feeds off of them, right? It's, again, Nell says, every house, it's like a body. It has a heart, it has a soul, it has a stomach, and
it could have had a deathbed while it was at it.
Right. And then she says, I feel like I'm, this is a monster that ate me, and it feels me, these little movements inside, and it's me. So this house is just so encompassing and bringing everything together. When Hugh and Olivia got there, their idea was, we're going to fix this place up. We're going to get buku money, and we're going to be able to have that forever house. And Olivia was so focused on that forever house, right?
It's so true. Because, like, to your point, like, all the guys who should be a positive influence have virtually no impact. Like Clara, played by Annabeth Gish, who you might know from West Wing and X-Files. You know, favorite character, by the way, is because she's just always such a joy to watch on screen. Is the caretaker, and you know she's doing everything a caretaker should. Say, hey, you know, let's go play in the garden. Hey, would you like help with your homework? You know, and they just push her away. They're like, well, nothing to do with you. You will never replace mom. And you know, I want my mommy. And what's his name? Kevin, Shirley's husband. You know, it's just like same kind of deal. He's like, what's wrong, babe? You know, and she's just like, I fucking don't want to talk to you. It's just like he is a useless husband. Not he just can't help her. And I think Kate Siegel's character, Theo, you know, the child psychologist, you know, she's feeling very touchy at every psychology session because she is there to help other people, and she feels like, you know, her strength is very weakening because all she can think about is, again, her awful past, you know. And so
it is true, but it's kind of so what I think Mike Flanagan did with this is he basically showed you how broken these people were after their experience. You have Steve, who doesn't even want to acknowledge the fucking thing. Olivia's gone. Hugh is not a part of, you know, these kids' family. Shirley, the reason why she is an undertaker is because the guy who helped her go see her mom was telling her, well, I fixed her. I did this and this and this to, you know, make her look like she's sleeping. I think that clicked with Shirley right there. Luke, well, he's a druggie. There you go. You know, Theo, she does want to help people, but she does not like to be touched. And there's reasons why.
Ooh, yeah. And they just, you know, just like anyone who shared grief, anytime you got just any kind of just tragedy, all they do is just remind each other, and yet they kind of want to be around each other, and yet they keep getting nightmares around each other. They keep, again, freaking out and saying, I'm done, you know, see you tomorrow, maybe not. Doesn't matter.
And they all kind of forget that they have a shared trauma, right? When you share trauma with somebody and you do not want to face that trauma, you want nothing to do with that other person that shared that tragedy with you, because all they do is remind you of what you need to deal with, right?
Can't not drive each other insane, yeah.
Right, you know, grief is this ugly thing, right, that nobody wants to deal with. And if I look at you and I have to think about the grief that I need to deal with, fuck you, get out of my face. You know, and that's basically what this whole family did. Nobody wanted to deal with the trauma that they had to leave the house the way they did, and, you know, mom wasn't there anymore. Dad didn't share because he didn't want the kids to think mom tried to poison us. And then
it really is cool how they take a while to get to the dad, because for a while they're like, her father's dead. It's like, he's not dead, but he's dead to us.
Right, exactly.
That was some brilliant casting. I would have never in a million years thought that 80s got actors like Henry Thomas and Timothy Hutton would be playing the same character. Henry, you know, the earlier version, and Timothy
Elliot.
the version. Yeah,
right, you know, little Elliot.
Your best. This is kind of, to be fair, not too dissimilar from Ordinary People. Hutton's breakout role.
And you know, this whole thing here, you know, and another thing that I love about Mike Flanagan, he has his troupe.
Yes.
And his troupe shows up in his movies because, and I think, at least I myself as a director would do this because I know exactly how they act, how they're going to take direction, everything. You know, you don't have to sit and think, well, how do I talk to this person each time you have something, a new project? It's like, I already know how to treat this person, and I know how they're going to react with this, and that.
Yeah,
but
I did all the time doing shorts for college, but it gets kind of a bad trademark because I guess certain people overuse many other actors, but then there are other ones where it's like, well, see, with someone like this, I'm pretty cool with this because, again, just this person has his shtick all figured out, and he just keeps growing and growing. That really he can't go wrong at this point.
No, I totally agree. And it also shows though the talent that these people have to be able to play these different roles in different stories,
Totally.
So
They all interconnect. You never feel like any of them is out of place or you don't know what's going on. And I think that's just it. It was just such a surprise because I think we've all started some kind of show or movie on Netflix and then been like, 40 minutes and nothing going on. I can't get into this. And this was just such a pleasant just break of that because it was very well shot. I did some background on the cinematographer, and lo and behold, it's like I want to check out all the projects he's worked on. He's worked on all kinds of tragic dramas, mysteries, and horror films, especially ones that were for After Dark films. You might remember that label.
yes.
Films to Die For. Yeah, he did a bunch of those. He did a bunch of other more mainstream stuff. Even stuff that, I saw I wasn't taken by, but I'm just like, yeah, I got to rewatch that now because he had the exact same kind of shtick in those movies that he had working in this show. And again, you got good material, got good ways to frame and light everything. You're set for life. You really are.
Exactly. And even a lot of the stuff that he does. So here in The Haunting of Hill House, we have the bent neck lady, right? And
Yep.
the reveal, I'm not gonna say who it is because there might be people who haven't seen it. When the reveal comes to it, it's fucking mind blowing, right? You're like,
Yeah.
oh fuck.
This can't possibly line up with this or that, but then
Exactly. But when the reveal comes, you're like, shit. Then we have
there's also
the
three
Bentnick.
other things to kind of figure out all at once too,
Mhm.
And so that's why this is going to make it be a multiple kind of rewatch. There is rewatchability. It is not, one well told, plot twist and that's it. There's other factors in there besides just the Easter eggs. But sorry,
Right.
let's see. Yeah.
And then you have the Bentnick lady in the Haunting of Bly Manor. And there is this certain mythos, especially English mythos, of the Bentnick lady, right? You have
Mhm.
real life, the Bentnick lady, for the parents, which are from, the family that lived in the Conjuring house.
Mhm.
There's drawings of the Bentnick lady, right? That the kids did while
That's
they
true. That's so true. Yes.
right? And then in English lore, you have the Bentnick lady, which is usually England. The Anglo side of it, the Anglophiles were more of we're going to hang the women that were witches and did all bad things instead of burning them.
I'm so glad they do reference Salem witch trials like any good horror movie does, because this is
Mhm.
like the best. It's kind of very much like the Native American, burial ground in The Shining. It just instantly lets you know is like, hey, this was a good idea at the
Something's
time
going
until I
on.
found this out. Yeah, after already having purchased this mansion.
Right. Something's going on. They moved the headstones, but not the bodies.
Assuming they're even bodies.
Right.
They're bodies. But it really is chilling, and it really is also just good at just it kind of just it parallels everyone's lack of confidence in themselves. They're already confused young kids.
Mhm.
Busy dad, very busy mother, and obviously did you get a sense that they just really just hated school? I mean, everyone generally does, but I mean, like, they really were just kind of underwhelmed with their studies, it seemed.
Well, I mean, it was the summer, so
Yeah, they're doing summer school. That's right.
it was a summer, and again, you have this idyllic setting, right? You're a kid, and you have a forest to play in. It's summertime. You have this huge house, and your mother flicks the porch light twice, and that's when you're supposed to come home.
Mm-hmm.
And, which I thought was beautiful is when Nell drives up to the house as an adult, the porch light flicks twice.
That's very true. I also noticed Scott Kozar was one of the writers on this. Now, if that name sounds familiar, he did Texas Chainsaw remake,
Mm-hmm.
wrote the Amityville Horror remake, and then he wrote the remake of The Crazies. So yeah, but his main claim to fame has been writing the TV show Bates Motel.
Oh, okay.
So last I checked, everyone kind of agreed on that Norman Bates prequel, but either way, I mean, it was kind of a similar one where it's like it was able to become its own thing, even though it was diving into, a familiar, pre-established entity. And I think what this one did, what Hill House does so well, is you really do kind of just forget, hey, this does briefly follow the 59 novel and
Mm-hmm.
the original Haunting, but it's got shit to do with either of those. It's its own deal, and it's comfortable being its own thing, and without shitting on any other version or even just feeling uncomfortable going there. It's totally comfortable going there.
Yeah, and I think it's just a beautiful move. I mean, just to be able to, even the names, right? Luke, Theodora, Nell, Olivia,
Mm-hmm.
Shirley, for Shirley Jackson.
Shirley, yeah.
Right?
It's so easy to name it after me. And casting pretty minuscule and yet just very key. I couldn't figure out. I take it James Flanagan is actually related to the filmmaker Mike, because it seems like he's in a bunch of his things, but I can't find any details. He almost always has like one or two people who are related to him. Like it can't be a coincidence, but you got nothing listed on your IMDb page, so I don't know anything about you.
Well, nepotism is rampant, right?
But I'd say this is the best kind of nepotism because like it was
Yeah.
very comfortable. Like his
It
wife
works.
Kate Siegel again is just so good as Theo, and I mean she was acting even before they both met and started working together. So it's like I think it's just, don't get me wrong. I mean I've been on plenty of low budget, or shall I say non-budget movies that will fortunately never see the light of day. And anytime there was a boyfriend or girlfriend predicament, it never failed. There was always a breakup, and that movie was lost to the days of time. It's how bitter people get. And then it got even worse because, I don't know, people who have all this time, they have the ego part down, but they don't have actual organization down. Almost always the movie comes out and people are confused, or they never hear about it and everyone's just so sick to death of it. They're like, we don't care if it ever comes out. And fortunately, this is just a lower budget Atlanta production with a ton of Netflix backing. And Mike, I don't think has really ever had to get rid of his how he runs his sets. I don't think, because you look at how he went from Absentia to Oculus, and then from Hush to doing a sequel, which was so good, better than the movie it was a sequel to, Ouija Origin of Evil, and then doing the Stephen King's, Gerald's Game and Dr. Sleep. I think at this point he's naturally earned his freedom. He's going to keep challenging himself, and he's going to keep challenging his fans. And he said that he's even inspired by other people like William Friedkin, who I think that's a good, inspiration to be inspired by. Exorcist,
Oh,
and
most definitely.
The Guardian, and Sorcerer. So yeah. But going back to many of your points, I think this is just a very beautiful tragedy. I think this is just so naturally unfolding. It
is.
You never feel like this is a lifetime, cliche production,
Right, it's not like The Conjuring, which to me was kind of like a Lifetime movie with jump scares.
What's wrong?
But but again, though, even though that's what it seems like, it was entertaining and it was fun, and anything with Vera in it, I devour, because I really enjoy her as an actress, so
Fair enough.
And and again, back to the haunted house thing. Who doesn't love a haunted house story, man? A ghost story. Those, I
Could be
think those
fun.
probably are the first stories that people were really, really telling at the time, from the very beginning.
It seems like it for a while, because then you kind of had just everything else had to kind of be an unusual kidnapping or held hostage, or maybe even a home invasion movie for that matter. And now they've kind of changed it up to where they've kind of done the Christopher Nolan format where they show literally a minute, and it just, fortunately, some people in the marketing department have just played into it now, and it's paid off for everyone. We're just like, I don't know what it's about, but I will be there opening day. I love the names attached, and I love that it made me just say, what is that?
Exactly, but so the love for cinema and the love for stories has always, it's always been a driving force for us as a society, right? Because we want to be entertained.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to learn and hear new things and be told about new places and stuff like that. So, to be
Lionsgate has always been kind of number one for indie horror. I've found, much like Styx Media has kind of figured out their whole shtick, which is come out with some kind of cops and robbers or crooked cop movie, twice a year.
yeah, and yeah, I guess what I was trying to say was that we as a society have always wanted something to kind of, we like our adrenaline being pumped up, but with knowing that we are not
natural excitement and scares.
Yeah, we are not actually in danger, but we like that excitement.
Totally.
And the ghost story, I think, is just the perfect medium and the perfect genre to give you that. So, going back to, caveman days, or if you don't believe in the caveman, back to the days of the Mesopotamians and, way back then, for somebody to be sitting around a campfire and then start telling you a story about Tiamat and how, the blood from Tiamat is what created the world and stuff like that. There's always this thing about wanting to be ramped up, but know that you're safe. And I think that's why the horror genre and the ghost story has had such a beautiful history, going way
Totally
back
concur.
when.
Well, I mean, and I think that's why it was easy for a lot of them to just kind of play into just some kind of culture. Is like they would do kind of the religious horror, and they would do my personal favorite of those subgenres is probably Egyptian horror, because you can do so much with pyramids and just kind of, it even kind of plays a little into kind of Lovecraftian kind of stuff, where it's just like, you have opened the equivalent of Pandora's box. You have, sealed the deal. And I think that's what even The Omen and Hellraiser was kind of helping other studios kind of come up with similar ideas. And I mean, you've talked about all kinds of movies and knockoffs before, and it's like sometimes the knockoffs were better than the movie it was a clone of, because it's just like, it's inevitable. Someone's going to want to do it and, share the candy.
Well, of course, I mean, if it works, why fix it?
Correct. And I don't know. I mean, I've talked with other people who, we all vary on found footage, but it's like were some good later found footage movies we found, like Record and Hell House LLC, I think, is a good parallel to
that
this.
One's fun. That's a fun little jaunt. All of those movies are fun.
Well, and because it just showed you how the simplest stuff can be the freakiest. And I find, even, especially with this is no exception, I find that music is the best way to just get a terrifying vibe from everyone, where you're like, I can't watch this at night. This is creeping me out.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about the soundtrack of this movie. It is a beautiful soundtrack, isn't it?
Yes, and fun fact, the Newton brothers are actually not related to one another. Andy Grush and Taylor Newton Stewart. So if they sound familiar to any of you, they use guitar, cello, and piano. They have won previously a Fangoria Chainsaw Award, second place for best score for Flanagan's Oculus.
Oh, there you go.
They'd also been nominated for Ouija Origin of Evil, so there you go. They stuck around with Flanagan and all his movies, but they've done all other sorts of movies. See No Evil 2, Life of Crime, The Road Within, Open Water Free, and various TV shows as well. So, I mean, I definitely recall their score for Line of Duty. This was another Race Against Time movie that came out about 2 years ago, going on free. But if anyone's seen the Escape Plan movies or Doctor Sleep, you definitely, or the Forever Purge, you have heard their movies scores.
Yep.
I think the best part about their scores is I listen to movie soundtracks all the time through iTunes. I just can't help it. I need a soundtrack just playing while I'm on the clock. And there's plenty. I know someone is talented if a score just has some great capability, regardless of whether I've even seen the movie or not.
Yeah, if a score can get you to feel things without even looking at the screen, it's something to say.
Hell, even as a contrast, I've seen more of their work than I even realized before I did research today, and I've seen the no budget garbage that was Magic Man. You should totally see it. It's a hysterically bad movie that co-stars Andrew Divoff, Richard Tyson, Bailing, and Armand Ashante. But their score was really good for an otherwise dreadful, movie. And there's something to be said because, again, music can really make or break a movie. I feel I've seen that argument a few different times.
Very much so.
And I think you and I are taken back by their song because that feature in this show because it's a really subtle kind of music, and I don't think that's easy to do. Usually everyone's kind of subdued or overturned. It's quiet moments and then loud moments, and I think this soundtrack is a very just little small rhythms here and there. And it's not even the foreshadowing kind of music. It's really often when shit hits the fan and it accompanies the sound effects.
Right, and it flows. It just flows beautifully with the storytelling. It's kind of like you've got this background music playing while somebody's telling you a story, and that's exactly what he does here. And I think it's just so beautifully done. It hits everything. It hits you with the storytelling. It hits you with the cinematography, the soundtrack, and atmosphere. All of those key elements in this is just made so beautifully. The sets itself, you see, first of all, you see this house and you go, oh, wow, what an awesome house. But as this movie starts to progress, the first episode even, you start getting a creepy feeling like, I don't think I'd like to be there.
I couldn't concur more because, I think from the ground up, Flanagan knew what he had to keep kind of building, and that was most certainly, especially the atmosphere and the writing. Because, you look at his first movie, Absentia, I remember when he actually went on to rifftracks.com and even pressured them to riff it.
Really?
So I don't get an ego about the man. When I saw that chat, we were all blown away. We're like, what? That's the dude from Oculus. And they want him to he's giving them permission to make fun of one of his first movie. Oh, and see, I had seen it twice, and each time I keep forgetting he made it. But I think that was his landing point. He realized how anyone can make any kind of movie with any kind of resource. And I think he just kept picking other people's brains and finding out other ways to improve instead of just relying on crowdfunders, like the case with that first movie he did, and good actors. Yeah, I think he realized he had to keep again, what every good filmmaker does, challenge yourself. If it's too easy, then It often is, and that's not good. You gotta keep. I'm not saying you gotta kill yourself on a film set like some of these maniacs are known for doing, but you gotta really keep raising your bar, holding yourself accountable for various things, and keep finding different ways in which your story can unfold, and be willing to make the cuts without sacrificing the story. And I think so many times people will make a cut and the story will suffer just because they didn't have extra time to shoot, or the additional storylines would have just been too much for even that day and age. And I think he just knew he has to start out simple and keep getting detailed,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, keep adding to it, and then that makes it even more vast than it already is. And I think everyone else, they're not able to do that for the most part, good or bad. Yeah, I get it. It's hard not to. You want to get bigger names. You want to get a bigger set and have extra time with different cameras. But, if you can't, you can't. So.
No, I totally agree. I mean, it's just like this beautiful snowball, just growing and growing and growing, and eventually you get to that climax that you want, right? It's there and it doesn't disappoint. I mean, even with I know we're not talking about Midnight Mass, but even the final climax of Midnight Mass was. I mean, you cheer at some of the stuff that happens because you're like, fuck you, and then the other ones are like, aw.
I'm going to
so I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
I get an idea, but yeah, it is one of those is like, oh no, you didn't.
It's like, fuck you, it's, there you go, you stupid. But, and with some stuff, it's deservedly so or not. But in this here itself, the climax that you're wanting, it's a horror, it's a haunted house story, it's a ghost story. So it needs to end with resolution and a happy ending. And it doesn't feel forced.
Or not.
And you don't feel like, oh, fuck this. Right? Because there are plenty of movies that are ghost stories that you're like, oh, for fuck's sake.
All great until those last 5 minutes.
Right? It's kind of like, and the end. And you're like, wait, no. No, this had this beautiful resolution to it. It left you feeling good. And, everything ended up being tied up in a really nice bow. And you're like, here you go.
Oh, totally. And I'm not surprised at all that Flanagan's company, which he now is like co-runner of Intrepid Pictures, is even producing a few other things. He's supposed to produce an 8-episode miniseries of The Fall of the House of Usher. That's right, the Edgar Allan Poe work. And he's got the Midnight Club. So I think he's going to keep doing this. I don't think he's told movies off for this time and being, but I think he's finding that he has more time to tell a very intricate story, and I think he's going to keep using that freedom for as long as Netflix allows him.
No, I mean, why wouldn't they?
Well, and see, that's the thing, because Netflix keeps getting shows and then canceling them after like 2 or 3 seasons. So, I think he has the freedom because he doesn't wait for them to keep renewing. He knows that he's going to be a one and done story each time. He doesn't wait for anyone's permission.
Exactly. Well, there is that, but Netflix on their side, I mean, this guy brings the crowds in, right?
Oh yeah, he has to be getting them all the plays, all the
counts. There you go.
So they're like, we're not going to shit on his oyster. We are not going to.
Exactly. They're going to ride this wave as long as they can.
We're not losing him to Apple or HBO Max.
Right. I mean, come on.
Play ball. But no, hitting on your earlier point even more so. I mean, the story does feel merited. It does feel earned. You don't feel cheated after hours of watching it and just saying, I gave time to this, Yeah,
I mean, there's like I said, there's other stuff that I'm like, oh, fuck this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I sat here for that long and this is when I
talked about that ending for this amount of time. What the hell?
No, this it's a complete story, And I'd have to say that in our beloved genre of horror, a lot of these movies have a tendency of like, oh, go, 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 oh, look, 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 the end. And you're like, what? You know, it's kind of like you're pulling the mask off of the guy from Scooby-Doo, and you're like, oh, come on, really?
I think that's a good point, because there are a lot of movies and shows where they lose their tone in the last 10 minutes where you're like, okay, you're doing so good, and then you just went for the easy ending. And don't get me wrong, I got this problem with action movies. There's like the last Mission Impossible, and it's just a Tom Cruise ego stretch. And I'm like, come on. You're taking out the fun in this movie, everything that came before. And so, yeah, there's also just plenty of movies where you just like, you see people talk about them, and you watch them finally, and you're like, I'm not going to go back to that. That was a one and done for me. And
Yeah,
this
you know,
one
there is stuff like that. Yeah, but this here, though, is...
You're going to need to see it a few different times.
You do. You really have to, because... And I'm glad I did rewatch it, because I keyed in on things that I did not last time. You know?
Oh, totally. And I'm even spotting more and more actors who I didn't realize were in this. Like, Rahul Kohli is in Bly Manor and Midnight Mass, apparently. And I'm like, oh, shit, that's the dude from iZombie. Okay, awesome. Zach Gilford is another one who's in a bunch of his latest stuff. And, you know, I would have never guessed that he was going to become a horror guy. So it's like, I think he's also just taking, that's why the actors want to work with him, because he's taking them to their next level. You know, it's like,
yeah, and who wouldn't want to do that, right? As an actor, why wouldn't you want to do
be
that?
Challenged. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of people who want to not be challenged. You know, they just want to come to work. They already got to pay the rent. But after a while, you're going to end up leaving a movie or a show if you just don't feel like you're being challenged as an actor. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I totally get it.
But I mean, I'll even just applaud Flanagan for just, you know, for a while it seemed like he was going to just hang tight with Blumhouse, and he's just had the opportunity to just kind of keep just working with new and different people each time, you know. No one expected him to just be the indie guy, and then the Blumhouse guy, and then the Netflix guy, and then the Stephen King adapter guy. So
right,
I will not be surprised if he decides, you know what, I got something totally different in mind. And even if his fans are like, I didn't want, you know, that they do what they do with like their favorite band artists, I don't really care for you going in that direction, they'll still turn up and say, hey, you know, I can't blame them. I would probably do the same thing at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there aren't very many producers that, or directors that will go in one genre and then kind of like give you a flip.
No, they pretty much, a lot of them, especially with horror, would often just be, I'm the horror sequel or remake guy. And then finally, when I make my return, finally I can option, after getting praise or lots of hate mail, I can finally do my own shtick.
Yeah, well, you know,
it's not easy to get your own thing going. It really isn't, because so often, you know, producers will be dishonest and kind of take your idea but change it so they can't say, oh, that's what someone pitched to me yesterday. You know, I just didn't want to pay for a script. And then there's, again, other scripts that are great, and there are people like Joel Silver who do legit love movies and get the business and how to just play hardball with both camps, but they still, for the life of them, just can't get something out of development hell, because it's just, they can't find anything that merits the budget or how to create it, you know? And that's also just, it's just not easy, because, you know, everyone's got a different way of how they want to adapt something. Let alone,
because
I mean, like Unforgiven, that was on the shelves since the 70s. And finally Eastwood picked it up. So, and I mean, there's plenty of other movies and shows that did that.
Yeah, and you know, it's that person's vision, right? So, everybody's gonna give it, you know, their own personal twist. But what I enjoy about Mike is that the respect he has for the original text is very apparent.
I couldn't say it better.
You know,
you legit feel like you're getting his actual voice, not someone who's getting too cute for their own good.
Or, is it just being handed a paycheck?
Well, yeah, and I mean, as we've seen with how toxic the fan base for stuff like Star Wars or Halloween has gotten, it seems like nowadays you kind of don't want to touch too many franchises, and at the same time, if you're going to touch a franchise, you got to really prove that you can be a part of that whole thing.
No, yeah, and I think it has a lot to do with the confidence of the person that's going to do it too. I mean, if you're not thick-skinned and you are not going to be able to handle the original fanboys and fangirls, having, their titties twisted because it's a girl instead of a guy.
The terrible expression. I know what you mean, though. It's just like, yeah.
Okay, I
Don't
mean,
feel like you can even go the extra mile. If you don't even feel like you have any interest in this, then yeah, you're already screwed. And I think it's a tough deal because it is so easy for a producer to hire someone with no genre experience and who they got dirt cheap. And then it's also easy to, I mean, Alec Baldwin said it best. It's easy to suck.
Oh, yeah.
But if you know you're going to suck less. So I think, there's a lot of people who can be workmanlike. Like, I think James Mangold is a good example of workmanlike. He does a lot of stuff which is pretty much a throwback to various stuff since the 70s. But people like it, so they keep going to his movies, regardless of how original he really is with the screenplays and with his direction. So there's plenty of people who can do stuff like that. But with Flanagan, I really feel like he loves the genre and he just loves character studies. He loves doing mystery elements. He loves doing other playful things. Because like M. Night Shyamalan, I think, is a good example of someone who got screwed over by both having way too much confidence and also just really bad studios, really bad producers. So he was kind of done there for a while before he was finally able to make a breakthrough back in, and you shouldn't have to do that. You really shouldn't. I mean, I get that everyone does the whole you're only as good as your last movie, but there's plenty of people who have had multiple flops and they'll keep getting to do a movie because they have like an award win to their name or just enough other interest and praise that someone's going to come back to them eventually. So Flanagan's been able to do a lot of stuff for limited releases, wide releases, and even straight to the internet. He's been able to kind of remain untouched because I think, again, he's not just on budget on time. He's just very organized. And I think we just don't have as much organization. Like, when I was in film school, no one was telling me how to remain organized. They were like, you should shoot with this kind of camera or that kind of deal. I'm like, people can easily forgive how a movie is shot if they like the story. You're not telling me how to make this story better. You're telling me what filmmakers you don't care about. Well, I could give, a rat's ass what you don't like. That person is part of me,
Mm-hmm.
Sucks. I think we're gonna just get in a little more snobby though with today's world because we're just having so many people who they don't know how to even describe why something sucks. Like, when's the last time you went to IMDb? If you did, you probably saw like a one sentence review saying this movie sucked ass.
Explain why.
There is not much constructive, only just very colorful reviews that I see nowadays to where it takes forever for people to kind of even check out stuff like this. I think it's like, because again, you got to put time for it and you got to see if it matches with what your interest level is. But I think he's going to keep having his earlier and later movies keep being rediscovered because he fortunately seems to have a lot of good marketing and repertoire on his side.
Yeah, and of course, word of mouth works really well.
He has really embraced social media. I've been really congratulating him on that front because it just seems like so many people use it wrong. which is, they do the Chrissy Teigen or Charlie Sheen way, which is I'm going to just engage with people and vent and then just say, fuck y'all, I'm closing my account down and I'm coming back. I'll reactivate my account tomorrow. This is like, why do that? Why engage in a good way? And it seems like, in fact, I'll even use another one, Omari Hardwick. If you know him, you've seen him in Army of the Dead and the TV show Power. He's really good on social media. When people pick fights with him, he kind of just lets them have it. He just backs down and you don't see him. He knows how all eyes are on you, and the last thing you need to do is make an ass out of you.
So he knows how to gracefully bow out.
Yeah, there was one person who seemed to kind of be instigating him and joking about a character that had been killed off on his show, and he just was just like, he went dark and just went on and posted something totally unrelated the next day. So it's like the last thing you need to do is just feed all the clickbait sites, all the all the people who make a living just saying, did you see what so and so posted?
Yeah, don't feed the trolls, right?
What was that? And yeah. I don't need to be made fun of on E! Or the Daily Show the next day. I don't want that. And I think he also he knows how to do a kind of a natural Q&A. I would be curious to check out some of his director's commentaries. I'm sure have they released this on DVD or Blu-ray yet?
Haunting of Hill House? I don't think so, no.
No, okay. Because I know that was an option for like not Game of Thrones, House of Cards, where you could have the director's commentary playing during the episode. They later allowed that for the late Joel Schumacher and David Fincher, who had helmed a bunch of episodes, so I was curious to hear about that. But it would be cool to definitely hear his commentaries. I should check out which movies and shows do have that option for him, but I would definitely be the most interested in something like this.
Yeah. Yeah, this would be kind of interesting to hear commentary as it's going on, just to kind of get an idea of where his brain was at and what he was thinking.
Sometimes you need a reminder where your eyes should be placed. So I guess I don't want to keep you too long. How about we
that's okay.
To Bly Manor?
Or did you want to discuss how it compares to the other two hauntings of Hill House, the movies?
Oh, we certainly can. I'm so glad you brought that up. I saw The Haunting again not too long ago. I still think it's decent for a Robert Wise movie, but I mean, we're talking apples and oranges. We're talking about an earlier, inspirational 60s movie, pre-Amityville. I totally recommend it still. I think it's very taut on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
Slower moving, but it can't help it. That's acceptable for a 60s movie. They had all the time in the world. I take it you've seen the 99 remake.
Yeah, I've seen all three actually. Well, three as with the drama series here.
Not stop. And I just remember people not only love to just kind of complain about the 99 remake, and for me, it may not be a good movie, but I'll always remember an unusual slow motion decapitation that features it.
Oh yeah, no, that okay. So with the one in 1999, I think a lot of people shit on that movie, and they really shouldn't, because I really, really enjoy it. The chemistry with all of those characters, with all of those actors, just really worked well. Then you have the 1963 one, where it's about atmosphere in that one too. It's a lot. It's black and white. It's again a ghost storytelling. The 1991 one was very visual, extremely visual movie. The decapitation, the bed doing what it was doing,
Yep.
and
it had a good cast. I dug Zeta Jones and Liam Neeson, but they kind of, if I had any other complaint, it was just that they kind of faded into the background kind of after a while.
But see, they were supposed to, though, because this isn't their story. It's Nell's story.
That's true. Fair enough. They kind of carry it for a while and don't spend as much attention on Nell, but at the same time, like, I mean, I find it acceptable and watchable, like you're saying, compared to most movies, which just kind of were kind of a love-hate watch. You're like, I can't stop watching this. This sucks, and I didn't ever get I can't, I can't handle any of this. I found it perfectly watchable. It was just one of those. I don't know. I think it was a victim of just kind of late 90s and that no one really knew how to market it. And so it just kind of got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, it probably did get lost in the shuffle because, first of all, it's called The Haunting. So
people are too busy going to I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream sequels. And they're like,
right.
In old
and,
school.
The 90s was more about, slashers and gore. It wasn't about a ghost story telling. So I don't, and plus it was a PG-13,
Yeah, everyone makes a big fuss about the rating, and I'm just like, I don't care if it's earned naturally. It's like, and this was around when I think people were slowly wising up and they were just waiting for cable TV when they could just rent the unrated version, from Blockbuster,
Yeah, and
effects.
That's a very good point. Very good point. A lot of people were just gonna wait. That's
was
what I would
like
do.
When TV shows started becoming a pre-binge before Netflix. Is like most people would be like, well, I dig what I'm seeing, but I've come in late, so I'm just gonna wait to buy the videotapes or rent it from Hollywood Video.
Exactly. No, and that's exactly what I used to do. Like if there was something in the movies that was there, but I was kind of interested, but I didn't know if I wanted to, fork out $8 to see it. I knew that if I waited 2 months, I could pay $2.29 and I could take it home and watch it as many times as I wanted to. So why not, right?
Totally. Yeah.
And that is what I used to do.
Fortunately, near the end of the 90s, that was when they started discounting those videotapes and DVDs.
Yeah, it's like, oh, look, discount Friday, and you could just go in there and
payday's just in, the check cleared, I'm gonna spend $50 on this.
Yeah, you would go in and you could like grab 3 DVDs for the price of 2, and they'd give you free popcorn. Boom, done.
Yeah, baby.
So why not?
Why not?
But yeah, and it's what the one thing that I love about between the 1963 movie and this series, you have the Dudleys, Mrs. Dudley saying, "We never stay here at night in the dark." It's that beautiful thing there where she's like, "We clear the table at 6 and we leave because we do not stay in the dark at night." You're like, okay, get it. It wasn't overdone like it was in the 1963 version of it, but yet it was effective, right?
I think that's a good point. They both kind of play to what was the typical kind of trope to unleash based on that era. Again, that's
exactly.
So true. 63, actors play to the camera. 99 actors play to the camera slightly a little differently, a little more subtly, or sometimes more bluntly. But it really just depended on the material. But yeah, they definitely do what you typically kind of expect from.
Right, and then you have the Cup of Stars when Nell has stolen the car and is driving herself to Hill House in the 1963 movie. She stops at a little cafe or something, and she's in her head and she sees this little girl and she is talking to this little girl telling her, "You keep that Cup of Stars and you never let somebody take it away from you." Right? Yes. So in this one, Nell ends up with a little tea set that she found in Poppy's room. Mm-hmm. And she has, that little tea set. And Mrs. Dudley says, your Cup of Stars. So that's beautiful, right? And then when Mel when Nell is at the hotel, because she's on her way, adult Nell, is at the hotel on her way to Hill House, which is the very same place that her mom was sitting and called Dad, says, yeah, sure, yeah, I'm at my sister's, before she was going to do what she was going to do. What was she drinking her tea out of? Sitting on that bed, a blue cup with stars on it. It's just that attention to detail that Mike Flanagan gave this beautiful story that it just blows my mind and just, just always keeps hitting it out of the park for me.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, I feel like nowadays everyone they kind of want to jump on the Shyamalan, Christopher Nolan bandwagon and just have a bunch of, they want to have at least 6 different plot twists, but they don't really want to back up even half of them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And he can justify each of them. He can go into detail on each of them without even asking them. You know he can, because it just, again, it's kind of like how comedians say, is like, the right people get my jokes, and this is it. The right people who are clued in, dialed in, understand this project.
Right, and that's what's so beautiful about this. But then again, if you are, like, say, a newcomer, you've never heard of The Haunting from 1963 or
It's all good.
1999, it still makes sense to you, because you know that as a little girl, she had that cup of tea with her little stars on it, and as an adult, she still has a cup with stars on it. So it's kind of like I said, it's this bow that he just ties it with this beautiful little bow and presents it to you and go, here it is, complete.
And it's just so earned, and just, I mean, that scene alone that you're bringing up really is so well shot. Like, there wasn't any extra shiny stuff that they had to even add to it. It's like you just instantly is like, oh yeah, this is all coming to fold. And again, it's just like, regardless of how dialed in you are, you just know that it will pay off. And when you get to the payoff, it's just like, damn it, I want more. This
Exactly.
This is the exquisite meal, and now I want dessert, and now I want dessert with dessert, and now I'm a greedy whore. I can't believe I'm doing this.
Just bring me the whole pie, okay? Don't give me a slice. Just bring me the whole damn thing.
How many tips does everyone want tonight? Yeah. But yeah, good acting even on just on. I think it's the maid who reveals that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's like it just, so that's the best way to introduce a side character, I feel, for any genre, but especially for a horror movie. Just like, have a character who is going to probably aid. Most of the time with these kinds of movies, it's just someone here to stop, the giant monster, or has a scientific cure. Mm-hmm. They're getting rid of the ghosts in the house. Is like, with this is like, they are just the person who was more there for them than either of their parents, and had something that stayed with them. And I mean, that's also just the best way to incorporate any kind of inanimate object, especially with jewelry, and in this case, pots and pans.
Right, give it a story.
You remembered it because it was just the only time on your earth which you didn't regret at this stage in your life. And
right,
it was your happiness.
Or another piece is the locket. When Nell, as a child, keeps seeing the bent neck lady, and mommy is sitting with her, Olivia is sitting with her in the library, I believe, and they're sitting on that chaise, and Nell says, "Tell me the story about the locket again."
Yes.
Right.
And very, very carefully, just details. It's like, I need to hear it again.
Yeah, right?
Please recite it.
Again, something that brings comfort to Nell. She lets her hold the locket so she would feel safe.
It's the only thing that comforts her. Yeah.
Right, but yet again, was she really safe?
Ooh, good question. Oh, shit.
Right. So it's just I
good
don't know,
acting
this
by
story.
Victoria Pedretti. She gave this role just so much sensitivity and ability. For a while, she's kind of leading the show for a while. I felt. I don't know about you. Who would you say was the main character you, if you didn't enjoy the most following of, kind of carried the whole thing? I mean,
Well,
the whole thing can back up its own 2 feet, but I just mean,
Right.
like,
I'd
who
have to
really-
say it's Nell, because it's Nell's
okay.
story. It
That's
is
kinda
still
how I-
Nell's story in this, because it is Nell who drives everything in this whole. I mean, it's 10 episodes, right? And
Mhm.
Nell drives everything in those 10 episodes. There are some characters that not show up in every single character in every single episode, yet she does.
Now I got a question for you, a follow-up question. I know she's in that other Netflix show that many people are talking about called You.
Oh,
Do you
is she?
recommend that at all?
Okay.
I haven't seen it. I'm asking if you've seen it.
No, I haven't.
Okay. I just saw that she has done so many other things. Like she has a brief role in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and guest starred on the Apple TV's revival of Amazing Stories, and has also just appeared in a bunch of other things like a Casey Musgraves music video. So I mean, her star is growing continually.
As it should, because she's good.
Totally. So yeah, I think that's kind of a good segue because she is also the protagonist in Bly Manor.
Yes, she is.
So as a result of these efforts, both she and Kate Siegel note themselves as being recognized as modern day screen queens. Do you agree with that label?
Screen queens or scream queens?
Scream queens. Sorry.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, it's fine. We got so many other, Quigleys and Melinda Bowers. So
Yeah, I mean,
it count,
why not?
Maria
they're good. I like
she doesn't
them.
really scream too much in either of these, so yeah.
Right, but I wouldn't call them scream. I mean, to me, a scream queen, Jamie Lee Curtis. Okay,
Well, yeah.
that's my, or Linnea Quigley.
I'd give it to
Bauer.
I'd give it
You
to-
know,
maybe these other anyone from the 80s or 90s. Obviously, Sarah Michelle Gellar will eat that up. So I mean,
yeah, I mean, they scream, right? These girls,
Yeah.
not so much. I mean,
Okay.
the ghost did scream, but yeah, not the way I would.
yeah,
think of it.
Kate kind of had it running just because she's been in all her other husband's movies in some key role. But yeah, it was like she's just starting out. So, and it seems like, I don't know. It seems like a lot of people get that just the minute they're in the horror genre, and you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I'm the same way with my action stars. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What are you doing putting them on their top 10 list? They just started out kicking ass. Give them 2 decades, please. And I mean, I even did that. Like, I rate like kind of the best stars like of every decade, and like there was one person who was like, oh, why'd you leave out Jackie Chan for the like 2000s? I'm like, because he wasn't doing as much in that day. Well, anything that was as relevant. So yeah, I kind of had that with even like my horror movie stars. It's like, well, Doug Bradley wasn't really doing much outside of Hellraiser sequel. So yeah, it's like with the Scream Queens, yeah, I kind of lost track of them. I didn't really follow them. I know Neve Campbell kind of gave up the horror genre after a while when Wes Craven kind of did too. So I was just like, yeah, I who was the next Scream Queen? I couldn't tell you. So
I wouldn't be able to tell you either, man.
I think Kate's a good nomination, but I don't think she's quite there yet either. So it's just like, I'll put her in the running if there's no one else. Long story short, kind of like the Oscars do each year. Oh, we got a lack of good movies, so we're just going to go with the most popular one that everyone likes. So yeah, Bly Manor is based on a lot of the Henry James' novels. So he's a guy I'm not read up on. I can't say I've ever read any of his other stuff, like The Spoils of Poynton or The Sense of the Past, although that was unfinished. But you know what I mean? I haven't read Washington Square. I know A Portrait of a Lady has been adapted a few different times. I vary on period piece stuff.
Yeah. Well, his stuff is I do enjoy his stuff. I've of course, Turning of a Screw,
Yeah.
Portrait of a Lady, Daisy Miller.
This is the one that's basically the basis for this.
Right, exactly.
It inspired the others. There was a movie that came out actually a year before that was called The Turning.
Mm-hmm.
So that I could not get into that one, but I don't agree with the F grade that Cinema Grade gave it. I'll put it that way. Like, Jesus, I didn't think it was that bad. It apparently was also produced by Amblin. Fun fact, and I did not know that. Apparently Spielberg wanted to turn it into a movie. Alfred Woodard and Rose Leslie were attached to it, and then eventually it went to Mackenzie Davis, and it kind of got lost in the spring shuffle. But it was a very interestingly shot movie. I will give it that. But how wild how everyone's doing kind of adaptations side by side, carefree of whether one comes out over the other. And
True.
It came out right alongside as Bly Manor was coming out. I'm like, come on, guys. It's kind of like how many people were doing like adaptations of famous people alongside each other. It's like, well, if you didn't see that, you can see the National Geographic miniseries. And it's like, yeah, we're just going to share each other's money.
There you go. But no,
Marketing
with this, with the House of Bly, the Haunting of Bly Manor, we get the classic English version of the ghost story, right? You have the interloper, the nanny.
That's a good way to put it. Yes.
Who comes in to already an established group. And this interloper is the one who experiences the various hauntings. And that's exactly what happens in this. But again, you get that sense of, I am telling a story. How does this movie begin? Exactly like how you want to sit. You're at a party, there's a fire going, the party's dying down, and somebody sits down and tells a story.
Correct.
And that is just such a beautiful beginning to this story that's going to be told. And you get the sense, probably about the third or fourth episode, that this is a person who is not only telling the story, but has experienced this. And then you try to figure out who this person is.
Totally.
By the second to the last, third to the last, you're kind of figuring it out already.
Mm-hmm.
But it is just this wonderful telling again of another ghost story and how it affects everyone. And this ghost story, again, a little bit more English because it has very defined characters of the English ghost mythos, right? You've got the Bentlick lady. You've
Speaking of
got
lighting.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that segue. Okay. So, one of the cinematographers is the Belgian-Italian cinematographer, nice mix, Maxime Alejandre. And you know him for filming the recent movie Come Play, Shazam, the superhero film, and the alligator creature featured by Alexandra Aja, Crawl.
That
So
was
there you
so
go.
much fun. That was
Those
so
are
much
three
fun.
different movies, totally different tones, But he's using the exact same kind of game plan.
Yeah, you know what? It's kind of interesting you mentioned that because the underwater filming on this is very similar, and
Definitely
it's
the fall.
very wow. It's claustrophobic. It is fucking claustrophobic.
You gotta make people feel like they're trapped,
Right?
Otherwise they don't feel terrified. But I know what you mean. There are ways in which it can easily misfire where you're like, whoa, I can't see anything now. I think a biggest issue for me is when someone lights a movie way too dark to where you really it either becomes unintentionally lazy or it misfires because you just can't see anything.
Yeah, you can't see anything. I mean,
I hated when they did in like the last 2 Godzilla movies. I was like, who is fighting who? I have glasses on, for goodness sakes. I do not come to the movies to be.
yeah, and with on BB and BC, we are constantly watching movies that are just too dark.
And it doesn't matter what remaster you're watching. You don't know if
They're just too dark. I mean,
dear.
or it's daytime and they have toned it down, the contrast to a point where you can't see a damn thing.
Jesus.
But with this, though, I mean, they give it such a claustrophobic feeling when anybody is in the water, and you feel like, oh my God, I need to take a breath.
Yeah. Well, I can't breathe. I might as well be panicking, and
Yeah, and it's the Lady of the Lake, another very English mythos, right? You have the Lady of the Lake from King Arthur's court, and what does the Lady of the Lake do? She gives King Arthur something to be able to rule everything, right? What does the Lady of the Lake here does? Right, exactly, for a price. What does the Lady of the Lake do here? She gives you what? Eternal life, but at a price, right?
She essentially is much like the sirens in the Iliad.
Yeah, exactly.
She represents everything they want and that they'll regret getting.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But building on your point even more, I would even say that this does a good job of just showing that, different setting, English countryside,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and so they're totally different territory. And once again, there is no parental figure. There is just, nannies and storytellers. And, even when we get to a key character, I won't give him away. I'll just say his name, Peter Quint. So, it's interesting how when they finally introduced him is like, they don't hold back. You're like, you've already seen his face before and you knew the place was haunted, but you didn't know who he was or what he represented. And here he is. He is there to represent, again, just where everything went wrong.
Right. And he's the rogue, right?
He is the rogue.
Every good English Gothic story has a rogue. Period. Okay. You've got the nanny, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the girl who fell for the rogue in his rakish ways.
Foiled again.
Yeah,
everybody
exactly.
succumbs to looks and lusts after, again, just the better things. But you still feel sorry for them. And I say that is what this does well.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes everyone kind of goes the Hellraiser way, and half the time you're like, I really don't give a shit. But hey, that was a cool death and comeuppance for that shitty person who, selfishly went their own way. But no, this goes Gothic romance, and yeah, like you say, it pretty much it keeps playing up to everyone just slowly just revealing. I'm at a loss of words at this, and that they essentially just they keep going back into their recollections, and but they keep hammering you over the head with, and this is what's going to happen next, and we're not quite done.
Yeah, and again, here's you see the talent of Mike Flanagan here, okay? Because the Haunting of Hill House, very American Gothic, right? It's almost House of Usher-ish.
Totally. That's what it's said to be inspired by, and I feel, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of movies that haven't used his tell as well, but I think the problem is me. I'm not the right audience for this. I just have trouble keeping interest in like looking for the scares, and just kind of it's for the most part often just a drama, and then there's a ghost reveal in the last 10 minutes. So I think that's the problem for me. It's not as much of a horror mystery as it is just kind of more of a mystery drama with people getting freaked out, and you don't really see what they're freaked out until like 3 episodes down the line.
Okay. Well, okay. So let's go with that though. But then here you see the talent of him telling a completely different ghost story. Okay,
Oh,
this
totally.
is
It's still enthralling.
it's still, you have to have a buildup of story. And again, what does he do? He's establishing characters. So when shit hits the fan, you know who that character is and how they will react. Right? There is
Correct.
no surprise. Right? There's nothing like, oh well, damn, that came out of left field. No, there's not, because you know exactly how that person feels, how that person was going to react, because you have a bit of character development, right?
Correct.
There are parts on this though that you're going, wait a minute. Again, there is the fluidity of time. You're jumping from one place to another. You're moving around, not in a confusing way, but in a way of how sometimes when you're telling a story, you're like, okay, well, for this to make sense, I need to tell you about this that happened long ago. Again, it's that type of storytelling that you're sitting at a campfire and you're listening to somebody tell you something. And this
Totally.
movie really, really brings that out, especially the ending. And the ending is so fucking English, it blows me away.
Now, I will admit, having seen it a week before this, I do not recall the ending. So.
Oh, you don't recall the ending? Okay,
I don't recall the ending. It lost me by episode 6.
Oh, really?
So, and again, it's just I find it very hard to just play along with these. I do think I don't regret watching this at all compared to any other show that has been a misfire for me, because, like you say, I was able to follow most of what they're going for. The freaky imagery and the set design, acting, and even just the music choices were all very inspired. And I think, I don't know if it was just that Flanagan kind of took a back seat. He kind of hired some of these other guys to kind of just do all these other choices. You can make an argument that maybe they were the best choices because they're more familiar probably with this kind of tell. I don't know. I was not as attentive and glued. I really wasn't all that glued. And so that's where it lost me by episode 6, where I was just like, now I'm just trying to get through this. But I will say this, like you said before, the build-up is very nice. And it is as English as can be. I even spotted a few Canadian faces. You might recognize Terrell Rothery. She plays Danny's mom.
Yeah.
She's Stargate fame, so that was a fun spot the actor deal. And would you say Henry Thomas as Wingrave, the estranged uncle, is a little more nefarious, a little more ruthless? in this character portrayal?
In his character portrayal, I think he's not ruthless, he's not dubious, but he is
very self-centered.
No, he's very aristocratic.
Oh yeah.
He is a lord. And first of all, his brother was the one that was the lord, and he was, in hierarchy, especially with the aristocrats, it's the firstborn, right? Secondborn, well,
yes.
Okay, kid, thanks a lot.
By the book.
Thanks for coming, right?
Now, fun fact, did you notice that mark from the room? That's right, Greg Sestero appears in this.
So, with this, he's very aristocratic. So it's not that he's ruthless or anything like that. He's just being him. This is how he is. the aristocrats, right? They can do no harm, they can do no wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and it's their little kingdom, whether it's way back when or even now. Yeah, like little cute side story. I knew a gal that was Welsh,
Oh.
and she, her dad, we would sit around and talk, and one of the stories that she would tell was her dad owned this little house, and they were kind of like the caretakers of the green that was there that belonged to the Lord. And they had been the caretakers for a good 200 years for a family. But any time that they wanted to, let's say, change something like the house or move from here to there or anything like that, anybody in that village had to still ask permission of the Lord of that area.
There you go.
Okay, so even now, I mean, you're like, oh, well, this is modern times, blah, blah, blah. No, it's still like that back there, it is still like that. So, they have their little fiefdom, and they rule over everything, whether it be house, person, whatever. So he's just being himself. He's just being the aristocrat, right? So he's really not being, at least to me, not being very ruthless at all. But again, I'm quite the Anglophile. I love these English stories and the storytelling and the way they do it. And that's why I was saying that the ending was just so very English, because let's think. Okay, think back on the Arthurian mythos. What happens to Arthur? He's carried away, and he becomes a legend. The Lady of the Lake does what? Gives him this special gift, and then she takes it back because he wasn't using it right. Same thing here in this movie. Something gets given and it gets taken back, but at the end, true love wins, because that's exactly how it is, right? In all of these, in Wuthering Heights, anything like that, love wins at the end, whether it's a little fucked up how it wins, but it still does. That there is that return to what was lost, the return of what was lost. And this does it in such a beautiful way at the ending. It's just wonderful. And throughout the whole movie, though, from the very beginning, you get already a sense that there's ghosties. The little dolls all over the place, right? The little girl is
it's inevitable from just the opening score.
Right?
Like,
the little girl is trying to protect everyone. And then when the nanny gets there, not the first nanny, but when Danny gets there, Danny meets with Hannah. Hannah is staring down into the well, and then looks up and she goes,
recall that scene. That was very well
you're the nanny
shot.
Right?
Yeah.
Later on, you find out why she's staring down the well. And you're like, whoa, okay, that was awesome. So all of these little things, and when at the end you start putting all these little puzzle pieces together, and you're like, oh my God, that's such a fucking beautiful little story that you've told me. Look at this beautiful little scenario that we put together. It's just amazing. I really, really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, I didn't regret watching it at all. And it just lost me just because you do have to, again, do a little more research also just on kind of just these kinds of societies and upbringings. And I think it definitely works as an English thriller. I kind of just wish it could have gone for even just kind of been more kind of like the original Haunting, probably in a way. It is to some extent, but I kind of just wanted a little more, just aside from just the freaky nature and everything. I kind of aside from just my general impatience with these kinds of formats and settings, I kind of wanted a little more, just kind of maybe just playing around a little more in the forest, probably, and kind of
Almost
just
like
showing.
you like more scary things coming out at you, or
Not
more
not so
ghosties?
much. Well, okay, so to not contradict myself, they did do a few kind of easy jump scares at the beginning, and then they kind of went back to just kind of the drama elements, and then they kind of went back to scares. And the thing for me is, it didn't really even feel. It was similar again to Hill House, but it was also, it could have easily been kind of made by anyone in my opinion. So I didn't really get any of Flanagan's signature that he
Really?
kind of has in his other movies.
I kind of
You get the Hill House kind of recollections, but I didn't really get any of his other kind of, shall I say, just kind of moodiness.
well, I don't know. For me, this movie, this little miniseries did have its atmosphere.
It had
you had characters that you kind of looked at and were kind of like a little questionable, and you were trying to, what is their story? What's their deal, right? And as the story progresses, you start seeing what their deal is and why they go to the church and, sit there in the little chapel with, burning candles. You figure out why Danny has been running from something all her life. You get a sense of secrecy, the American who's running away. That's always, something in most of these English storytelling, right? I mean, even to the point of in Dracula, Quincy, the American. He was never in America. Why? Because he was running away from his dad.
True.
So the English always write the American as, they're avoiding something, so they're somewhere else, or they're just so flippant about things that there's no respect or no character. and that's basically how this is all being presented. As you start delving deeper into the characters, the story starts to make sense, which is exactly what was happening in House, right?
To some extent.
He's developing, and then things start making sense to you as you start, like, every episode is the story of one particular family member in Hill House. Here, you're getting different stories and different storylines coming from all places, but they're all tying in. And as the deeper you get into, you start seeing how they all start to tie in. And I think, to me, that's, kind of like Mike Flanagan. I don't know. I kind of see his signature on a lot of this here.
You definitely get it especially with the flashbacks and the atmosphere. I don't know. I felt like the kids were good actors, but I didn't really find them intriguing. It was interesting how I'll give it this. I do like how they set the mood instantly, where there's like to run around misbehaving. They're like, and then they just come back. I'm sorry for how I acted out in front of you. Let me tell you this story. So that was a good, again, instant. This had most of what I wanted, which was instant character development and everything. It's just, I kind of wish the format had been different, even though, yes, it's technically a good format of what it's inspired by.
But it's not your bag. That's all it is.
Yeah. And I don't get me wrong. If there's maybe like a watch party, I would not mind actually watching with this. And it was fascinating for a while, and then I just kind of lost me. But I would give it another go if I needed to, and probably go from there. But I guess where Hill House just kind of I don't think this is fair to say that it raised the bar, because these are apples and oranges. These are two totally different shows. What Hill House I think did better for me, but what I recommend about it more was just hence why we kind of talked most of the episode about it, was just that we had just so much just interconnected tragedy, but then we kind of even went away from it and just showed how there might be some light at the end of the tunnel for some of these people. And there was some cases, not everyone's story got resolved because it was never going to be resolved. But with this, I kind of felt like it was a little more scattershot. Like it just jumped around from every character. Like one episode gave even more screen time to the housekeepers. That I kind of wish they kind of could have started off. I felt like just the way they arranged it, it could have been a little more just like remixed, for lack of a better way to describe it. Like I would have focused on the housekeeper to introduce the house, along with, again, the gal who's visiting and figuring out more about it. And then I would have gone from that point on to going to what makes the house tick. Does that make sense, or just have I lost it?
Yeah, I mean it makes sense, but then again, it's not the English way of doing it.
Yeah, I know. There you go.
We go back
Bloody
to
hell.
that whole thing, right?
Get out of here, Cameron. You know English, right?
We go back to that, right? Because it's a different way of telling the story. I mean, in the turning of the screw, I mean, it follows that pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Parents gone, nanny needs to come in, nanny starts saying these weird things, and that's exactly what happens here, right? So here you're trying to figure out, well, whose story is this? Is it Danny's story, or is it the kid's story?
That's where they lost me.
Right? And then you have the supporting, well, I don't want to say supporting actors, but you have the supporting characters of
yes,
the connections, right, that are between Peter Quint, the kids, and Danny. And it's just, I don't know, especially with the, I don't want to call her the maid, but with the housekeeper, with the overseer, right? Her story.
Not doing your homework.
It's just the way they started developing that storyline, and what you see is when she's sitting in the kitchen with Owen, and Owen keeps asking her questions, and you're like, so is she suffering a little bit from dementia? And then all of a sudden that big reveal, and you're like, oh fuck, that's what's oh yes, that makes sense now. So I mean it is a gothic romance, but and it's exactly what it gave it. And that's exactly what it gave me.
So yes, this is definitely gothic romance porn. It's definitely gonna hit the nail on the head and appeal in that respect. Getting there was fun half the time. I don't know. I really just wanted to kind of, at the end of the day, I still don't really feel like I truly understood the house, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, because the house was not the core character in this.
It's not a core character, but it's still what kind of connects the whole thing. So I don't know. I just I get that for the most time, gothic romances are almost always in a static kind of place.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, it could have been a little less static. I would have rather them kind of go on a countryside and then kind of lose their shit there. Say, just got this weird vision. That'll be explained 3 episodes down the line. But oh god, I still recommend it lightly. But as you've summed it up, if you're a huge fan of the genre, then it's going to fit right in. So.
Oh yeah, no. And I guess maybe. Okay, so you got The Haunting of Hill House, right? And it was Mike Flanagan, And then you've got The Haunting of Bly Manor, and you got another by Mike Flanagan. I think the expectation of this was, something similar to Hill House, right?
Not really, but yes, at the same time. Like, I knew it was going to be a totally different oyster, and then midway through, I'm like, oh, I haven't really liked any of these other.
Right, because your
true
expectations
adaptations.
maybe was a little different of what you were going to be getting. You were like, okay, this is.
I was
hate
just
using-
ready for him to just shock me in general, really.
Right, and I hate using this word, but a lot of people are going, oh, well, this is a slow burn. No, it's not a slow burn. It is
slow burn can be good.
a story.
But yeah, it is the story. Yeah, it's complicated.
Well, yeah, well, it can get complicated because I think a lot of people were expecting more. We were expecting more Ghost, and the man with the cane and the bent neck lady and ghosts like that, or a ghost like Poppy, right?
Mhm.
But no, these are more Anglophile ghosts, which are the Lady of the Lake, the bent neck lady, the children, the nanny, the unrequited, the two lovers. It's so Anglophile, and I think that's where the beauty of this thing comes in, is where you can see the dichotomy of this guy who can tell you a story in one way and then turn around and tell you another story another, and it all works.
It's definitely part of his appeal. He
Mm-hmm.
didn't restrict himself, and I think he wanted to do something like this too. Obviously he wouldn't have done it in the first place, but
He's
that's what I mean.
flexing, man. He is fucking
Yeah.
flexing, and he's doing a good job.
Yeah, for what it was pretty good. I just can't fully recommend it because I'm not a fan of the genre. But no, like you've already perfectly described, it is very beautiful in its angle, and it's bringing up a lot of those same tropes that are connected with this Tango of the Shrew connection. But just getting there, I wouldn't even describe it as a slow burn. I don't think that's the right word at all, because slow burn really does indicate that there's something that you're slowly, it's a thinking person's thing, you're slowly connecting the dots. I would describe it as more because I was kind of led astray by kind of the cheap jump scares and then back to just straightforward. And I get that they do that kind of half the time with these, but there's been plenty of these made-for-TV gothic romance movies where they don't even try to be scared. They just try to be just an unusual, setting.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess had it opened up slightly differently, I would have gotten into it way, way more than I actually did. Because I was I get that he kind of had to do that because he wanted to kind of just have a few jump scares in there and then slowly get back into what he was really going for, which was the gothic romance. But it kind of led me astray at first. And then when it became what when I figured out what this was actually based on, then I was like, oh, okay. So this is a totally different kind of thing that I'm getting into. So forgive me. I think I've just failed this genre multiple times and I've just never been able to get into it. But I think for this kind of subgenre, it is well made and well done for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just, you really got to be into stuff like this.
Well, you've got to.
Because Hill House I got into regardless of what the horror is, I just have to actually be interested by it. And it's not always easy to do because sometimes, I don't know, sometimes you can have all the great talent in the world and you aren't interested. So Hill House, I think, was really just trying to it was make it or break it. It was like, this is it. This is our first TV show we've got in the clear from Netflix on. We got to go above and beyond. And I think it paid off. And I think they just got a little too comfortable with this. So they just took their time and they were allowed to, because that's just what gothic romance typically is. And that's just where it lost me. I was just like, I had to just I wouldn't say keep extra note of everything, I had to just mainly just get back in the mode of what it actually was.
Mm-hmm.
So
No, that's fair enough. I mean, it's like, it's just not something that you were like,
it didn't
like,
gel for me.
yeah, it just didn't gel for you, and
But it's still well made, and I would even watch a scene from it just to see how they even constructed the whole makeup and scenery.
yeah.
Would you say this is a more expensive place that they shot at? Did they actually film in England or anything? I couldn't find.
I think they did film in England, and it actually was done in Vancouver, Canada.
Okay, so that explains the Canadian actors. But
Yeah, and of course, COVID, because it was shot in 2019.
ooh,
So,
mm.
but yeah, this like you were saying, this is it's a very specific type of movie. If you as a viewer, in general, if you as a viewer are expecting the frights and some of the jarring imagery that Haunting of Hill House had, you're not going to get it here.
You will probably like this if you like the others. Now, if you didn't like The Turning, you'll still probably like this, and it's definitely better than The Turning, I think, because The Turning, I think, got a little too self-indulgent with itself.
Oh, I haven't watched it yet. I'm gonna have to watch that.
That one, oh my God, there was so much dead space before you definitely got to the where you really felt the plot actually progressing, and I felt like they just relied so much on Mackenzie. It had gone through development hell so much, so I kind of got a bit of that, but it mainly was just relying on the lead actress Mackenzie Davis to carry it, and she was doing it all she could, but I just didn't feel like there was as inspired a filmmaker with that one.
Okay.
And this one clearly had a bunch of inspired filmmakers. Now, because there was like different film directors on each episode, I think that's why each one started out so differently.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the case with Midnight Mass, but you can tell me.
Oh, see, Midnight Mass, now again, a different type of story, isn't it?
Yeah, but
it's very
him helming the whole thing, or is he taking a back seat, like he starts the show and then gives it to the other guys?
I am not too sure. I know he is part of it. Let's see.
Let's look up.
Midnight Mass.
Because sometimes it does not make a difference, because sometimes if you just got great cinematographers and editors, everything just flows into the other ones, but then there's other ones where it's like, I can tell.
Well, no, it is created and directed by Mike.
Okay, so he did the whole thing.
So he did the whole thing, and
because there are shows like that. Like there are certain shows when they fired certain writers and directors, you can just tell. Now, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of people who they'll just look at a negative headline and they just won't give anything a chance. But there are certain shows where it's like there were plenty of changes, and I never noticed any difference other than they changed from like filming on film to filming on digital.
No, you really can't tell the changes in this. And again, the soundtrack for Midnight Mass really, really sets the mood to what
sweet.
you are watching.
Sweet.
It kind of gives you this is what we're presenting. Some people say it's huge social commentary.
Brothers. All right.
No. This, yeah. So they say this is a huge social commentary of current events right now. I'd have to say, yeah, okay. But
it's not necessarily a bad thing if it's done well, No,
it's done very well. It's done subtly. At some points, it's very, very subtle, and other ones, it is so fucking in your face, and you're like, shit, do we really look like that? So yeah, but going back to the haunting, yeah, they are different. Different episodes have different, directors and movers and shakers, as let's say. But I think that's another thing that I enjoy, because you can see the personality
Yes.
and how a story is being told. And I think maybe he did that on purpose, because you had so many storylines that in the end end up coming together.
It can definitely be done well.
And it can be done well. Exactly. And I think it was done beautifully.
Okay, perfect. Cool. So I guess closing thoughts. Would you say, so which of the two did you really prefer? Did you prefer, again, Bly Manor's romantic, gothic romanticism, or did you prefer just the haunting rehash that was Hill House?
I'm gonna
Or
have
just
to,
apples and oranges. Just
it's apples and oranges, really, man. I
Yeah.
mean, if
Because I get
I
that's a
had
different
to,
book, which one would you probably marathon more often?
it depends on what the kind of mood I'm in. Am I in a mood to, watch something that deals with a subject that is such a taboo subject of family dysfunction and suicide, or do I want to watch a gothic romance? It depends on what mood you're in.
All right.
So I would, I mean, mood wise, I guess, I would probably lean more towards The Haunting of Bly Manor. Okay. Yeah.
No, cool.
But you know what though? That's it's a very personal thing, dealing with, because recently going through the grief of somebody committing suicide in my family.
Oh dear.
So yeah, so I think I'd probably lean towards the Bly Manor a little more.
Gotcha. Too close to home, I get.
Yeah, it is a little too close to home, but I tell you what, rewatching it, I didn't know if I was going to be able to or not. But it was a really interesting watch for me, because it was a bit cathartic, and kind of like to see how different people deal with the subject itself.
Yes.
And how it was there, but it was kind of like in your face, but it wasn't. I kind of, it was really good. I enjoyed it anyway, so.
I mean,
yeah.
I thought that's how I was going to be when my mentor, my grandmother, passed away from bone cancer. It was like, no, I can handle generally anything.
Mm-hmm.
What I don't like is just, it all comes back to the same thing, which is something well written or not,
Exactly. That's exactly it. Is it well written? And
we mentioned The Room earlier just because one of the actors from that appears in a good role here, but it was like, that's a perfect example. Don't tell me you're dying of cancer and then that has nothing to do with the rest of the movie.
Yeah, there you go. But it's also, you can see it from a different angle. So
Yes.
yeah, and not only was it told right and told in an interesting way, but it's, I don't know, I just found it a bit cathartic and therapeutic to see how things were handled, and also it was.
No, that's a good way to put it, because there's plenty of movies where they can have, again, great production, invested actors, and they lose you just because of how, make your first 10 minutes count. Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, gonna give a recommendation to both. Just regardless of which one, just hits home. I still think most people are gonna just find these and just keep having something to digest with them. I think you're gonna especially just say, hey, that these people actually did think these out before they did it. It wasn't, what do we do?
Yeah, it wasn't just, collecting a paycheck. There was a lot of thought into both, and they were very well done.
Totally. And I mean, the production just shows with because that was kind of the problem for the longest time, is you were seeing a lot of Netflix ones that looked like they were just cheap red camera, questionable color corrections, and a lot of it are just taking their sweet time. Like, again, if you got 30 minutes where everyone's just walking around, what should take 2 minutes at the very most, that's what loses people. And so this one didn't do any of that, despite losing me, but it on the last part. But what they really both do very well is you just know that everything's just so carefully configured, and it's gonna lead to something one way or the other eventually. You never get a sense of confusing, okay, 20 minutes before I tune out bullshit like you might get with any other Netflix movie or show.
No, I totally agree.
Because they've had some duds. Which made everyone wonder, and I really don't even get their whole system, because there's been plenty of other stuff I've even mentioned on this show, like Another Life, which I would describe as dead calm in outer space. And they've kind of been under promoting a lot of their stuff. And I don't know if it's just that they don't want to put up a billboard or a TV ad that would make people say, hey, check this out, it's on Netflix.
I think a lot of the stuff that they put up is, it's the algorithm really that drives anything.
You get it in your notifications, but you don't really see any ad unless it's on IMDb.
Exactly. It's the algorithm that drives it, because I watched one Turkish movie, and all of a sudden that's all that appeared on my recommendations. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. So I started watching a whole bunch of other stuff, so I would get, like a little bit more diversity than just a bunch of Turkish stuff.
Uh-huh.
And now, of course, all I'm getting is Australian.
There we go.
But that's okay.
I got that too. Or just like I was watching one South Korean show, and everyone was like, I gotta suggest everything to you. I'm like, I only want to watch 3 of those 22.
Exactly. So it's all algorithm driven, and it's the same thing with Prime, right?
Oh, so, yeah. And it does. I take it all with a grain of salt, because I can remove something from my watch list or add it. I still have to add it multiple other times just because it's just not updating until you just.
Yeah, and then there's that too. So I watch the Squid Games, and then I have every single little Korean thing that can. No, I don't. I mean, yeah.
Oh boy.
So they rely on the algorithm. They don't have to rely on billboards and stuff.
No printing costs.
Hey, it's cheaper that way, right? But yeah, again, like you were saying, I totally recommend both of these. It's good storytelling. They're very visual, and extremely entertaining.
I would say more or less, because I mean, hell, when's the last horror show that you can think that you binged? Because they have stuff here and there, but most of it's just anthology stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've been binging the 2-sentence horror stories. Those are fun.
Okay. Perfect.
The very first one is fucking amazing. But yeah. And I'm, totally into the really weird shit, like My Paranormal Stories on
Gotcha.
on Netflix are hilarious. The Latino ones, woo!
Not sure who's legit and who's just making stuff up.
Oh my god! But you know what? It's fun to watch, and it's oh my gosh, the stories that these people tell. But I listen to podcasts like Spooked and stuff like that. So,
There you go. Wherever the laughs take you. Thank you ever so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. It's been amazing. It was great to be able to talk about these two.
We welcome you back anytime.
Oh, hey, whatever.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of it.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this movie.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history
up.
doll popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be a
did you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey. And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our queue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. With a one-liner plot holes and gratuitous movies. It's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
Welcome to Who Was She podcast. I am your host, Tara Jabari. After a decade working in documentaries, marketing, and all things digital media, I found that podcasting is a strong medium to share stories. After years of producing for others, I decided to start my own biographical podcast. Who Was She will focus on the life of a woman throughout Baha'i history. The first season is about Lydia Zamenhof. Lydia's story explores the subjects of the power of language and faith. Her father invented the universal language Esperanto, and she came from a Jewish family and became a Baha'i. She grew up during World War I and was killed during World War II in a concentration camp, despite heroic efforts to save her life. How can one person's life intersect with so many others, connect across borders, and inspire a biography which inspired this podcast? Over the next few weeks, I will share her story with you and the lives that were most affected by her and those who affected her life as well. They include her father, Ludwig Semenoff, her spiritual mother, American journalist Martha Root, and the Baha'i German soldier Fritz Mako, who worked for the resistance undercover while having to serve the Nazi Party. I want to thank the author Wendy Heller and George Ronald Publishing for their blessing to let me use Heller's biography, Lydia, The Life of Lydia Semenoff, Daughter of Esperanto, as a main and instrumental resource for this podcast. So please subscribe and learn about this amazing woman who traveled through 3 continents in an effort to bring unity through the power of language. You can also find more information on our Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Who Was She Podcast. Music was composed and performed by Sam Red. I am your host, Tara Jabari. Join us next time as we begin our journey about Lydia Semenoff.
Are you sick of the same old stale podcasts? Well, then join Vanessa and Darren as they dissect movies of all kinds. The 2 lifelong cinema lovers bring their favorites, curiosities, and first-time watches to the operating table and inject them with a healthy dose of snark. Then there's the waiting room, where they examine books and short stories. So just look for them on Apple Podcasts and where fine podcasts are available. They're part of the Legion Podcast Network. Follow them on Twitter at VDClinicPod. Join them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/VDClinicPod. Or email them at vdclinicpod@gmail.com. They're ready to cure what ails you. And still, they just might be a little contagious.
Hi there. It's Heather from the Watching Netflix Without You podcast. Did you know that there are over 1,200 Netflix original feature films and documentaries? And that number is only growing. So I've made it my mission to watch as many as I possibly can. Then, with a delightful guest or guests, disclaimer, more often than not my brother Ryan, we spend an episode rating, reviewing, and discussing a film at length. The first half of every episode is spoiler-free for those who haven't seen it yet, and in the second half, after a very clear spoiler warning, we dive into it. And that's really about it. You can listen to Watching Netflix Without You on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up